Sandy hit our community at low tide, and it's still 4.5 feet of water breached these shores. We're extremely vulnerable because there is no mitigation plans, and this is a place of mostly cement and asphalt, and it's not really a permeable surface for absorption of storm surge, and we want that to be one day.
When the floodwaters receded, there was a film on the ground. I emailed the Environmental Protection Agency several times and asked for testing to be done of those waters and whatever kind of contaminants would be in those waters, and I was blown off every single time. I've reached out to authorities that are supposed to oversee these issues, but that this community is systematically ignored when it comes to asking for testing to be done in what is a really concerning proximity to toxicity.
As human beings, we feel better when we're closer to water. So psychological effects, like some kind of light goes on when we're by. I guess maybe because we're mostly water, right? South Bronx Unite has made a point in building a coalition. We started off about 15 residents, some organizations, and neighbors. And now we're more than 51 organizations signed on to a platform for environmental justice.
And we are here at the Lincoln Avenue waterfront end, connecting to the Harlem River, which connects to the Long Island Sound, which connects to the ocean. We are here preparing the space, doing cleanup as a neighborhood organization.
And could you just explain what this is?
Absolutely. So the truck that's passing right now, this is one of several issues that we have going on here in the South Bronx, where right to my right is a 5,000 ton per day waste transfer station, which is one of 2 waste transfer stations on our waterfront that prevent the community from having waterfront access here in the South Bronx.
So we'll just let them finish their little conversation.
Sure. And that's an example of, we never miss an opportunity to spread awareness of what we're doing, of what's going on. So, you know, the guys driving the garbage trucks, they're not our enemies. It's the policies, it's the citywide policies that for decades have created the South Bronx as a dumping ground. And so those are the things that we're fighting against. We're not fighting against individual truck drivers. You know, we're really looking at the bigger, broader policy implications of dumping in the South Bronx.
Our entire waterfront is encircled by industrial facilities, highways, and truck zones. I think it's irresponsible to do that to a community, mostly a poor community of color. They have some of the highest asthma rates of obesity and diabetes in the city and in the country. To encircle its waterfront, which could be a quality of life enhancer, by industrial facilities. Man, even as we stand here, and you can smell garbage because of a waste transfer station right behind it. Right just next to us is a train line that runs garbage upstate and then down to Virginia to a landfill, where we handle all the Bronx waste right here at this location, and 25% of Manhattan's. And I think it's an environmental injustice.
Some might even argue that they've been deliberate because of the makeup of the community, but it is not by accident that 1 in 4 kids here has asthma, and that our rates of cardiovascular disease are sky high. Here in the South Bronx, we are completely surrounded by highways, and this started with Robert Moses when he did the Cross Bronx Expressway directly through the Bronx, which borders us to the north. Then we have the Bruckner and the Major Deegan expressways on the south. So the south and the north completely surround the South Bronx, such that the community is completely surrounded by highway. Then where we're at right now is this waterfront. Here starts an 850 acre significant maritime industrial area, and that is the largest significant maritime industrial area in the entire city. So what happens is it becomes an issue of zoning. If companies have very large industrial projects that they want to site in a particular location in New York City, they're not allowed to do it in other areas because of zoning restrictions. And so what happens is that those companies are able to continuously site their unhealthy projects in the South Bronx in this particular area, and in particular along the waterfront. You'll see dump site after dump site after dump site after waste transfer station after medical waste transfer site. it's constant all the way down the waterfront. And the argument for placement of all of these facilities in this community is always jobs, right? It's always the argument constantly. And I don't know that any amount of jobs would justify 1 in 4 kids having asthma, and if you can't breathe, you can't work. Fresh Direct is an online grocer that stands to receive about $140 million in state and city subsidies to move its diesel truck intensive warehouse facility, which is 500,000 square feet, to our waterfront. That would bring 1,000 diesel truck trips through the South Bronx every single day. Every single day. And we're saying it's not acceptable, it can't be done, and we're not going to allow it. And if they do want to, proceed forward with it, then we need to continue raising the questions about environmental racism, and we need to continue to have this conversation so that we stop any projects like that coming into communities. But so far, the community for more than 3 years has prevented the company from building here.
We have a true melting pot of different ethnicities in this neighborhood. People work really hard. They're really scuffling every day to put food on the tables for their children. They don't have a lot of time to take off to go to a public hearing that might be happening downtown at 10 o'clock in the morning. And so when I've spoken to and have given public testimonies to elected officials, it's always about do something different, meaning talk to the people, right? Have community input be the first priority and not the last, or not just a box you check off.
We've created our own Mott Haven Port Morris waterfront plan, which is an innovative way of trying to not only give the community access to the waterfront, but also to mitigate potential storm damage so that we can create a buffer between the water and the community. Because right now, if those floodwaters hit and they hit all of these very toxic facilities on our waterfront, what happens to the community? And we're the only ones asking those questions or forming answers to those questions. We're having this event to raise consciousness about our lack of accessibility to our waterfront, to take a look at the heavy oversaturation of diesel trucks close to our waterfront and through our community, and also to do water testing and canoeing lessons and a fishing contest and music on our waterfront, because it's important for us that our community has consciousness about what exists and about what the potential can be on our waterfront.
If you see someone doing something positive, you're going to want to do something positive. If you smile at someone, then they'll smile at someone else, and it's a ripple effect. So it's the same thing with your environment. If you know that people live in an area that has high flood risk, then do something to counteract that. If it means that you build walls so that when the water rises, it doesn't rush up, then do that. Don't just sit back and be like, well, they're just going to have to deal with that on their own. It's like, if you want people to try to help you get what you want, and by you I mean the government, then you have to also help them stay protected.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
I live over there, not too far down in South Bronx, in Mott Haven. Been here for a few years, really love the neighborhood. The people here are great, as you can see. But I work as a family medicine doctor in the northern part of the Bronx. When I'm working in the pediatric emergency room, it is just filled with kids, just staying in there for hours with just like a mask on in order to breathe, getting their treatments. It's almost like, part of their regular day life. Unfortunately, it's very sad. A very, kind of lopsided view of look into the city, and like this part of the city has really been undervalued. The resources just are not evenly distributed.
You like this? You like this? You feeling this? 45% of the city's municipal waste is running right back and forth right now, right through our community. Why do we have to carry such a disproportionate burden? That's called an environmental justice issue. Today, we're staking a claim. We are staking a claim. This is our waterfront. This is our community, and we are the ones that are going to have the final say about building this community up. So, all right, thank you very much. All right. Let the music go. Hey, there's food ready. Come on and get some food. Come and get food. Uno más. Cinco más.
Cinco más.
Tú has querido. Ay, bendito caramba, bendito caramba, bendito caramba, María, bendito caramba.
We're seeing impacts. We're seeing that there's more attention being paid.
Part of the major victory we have had, is the fact that so many people are coming together around environmental injustice that's happening in the South Bronx. And it's symbolic to what's going on around the country and around the world.
I'm affiliated with one of the community-based environmental organizations that's very active here in the South Bronx, organization called Friends of Brook Park. We're officially the organizational steward of a space, a community open space known as Brook Park here in the South Bronx. We have an urban youth farm. So we're teaching young people how to grow food, exposing them to what it means to have food locally cultivated and really appreciating our relationship to food. We've begun a youth-based business. We've joined together with about 20 other community gardens, so we are aggregating the production of peppers for this hot sauce company. The hot sauce is called Bronx Hot Sauce. It's being sold to some high-end outlets, but it's also being sold here locally in the community at farmers markets. I'm working with youth who have either been incarcerated in the past and or are currently court adjudicated, running through the criminal justice system. So those are the youth that we're engaging in proactive environmental initiatives where they're learning about organic protocols for cultivating food in such a way that, you know, really respects the land and really replenishes the land. We're saving the state on one hand millions of dollars in incarceration costs. It's over $250,000 to incarcerate one youth for a year. And then on another hand, we've introduced a model where we're generating income and that income is circulating in the local community. This is a very significant model.
Ray became a mentor. I didn't even want to go, honestly. I felt like, sheesh, like, this is not me. And then I started to learn more. And mind you, I'm into the culinary arts, so it's like dealing with all the plants and herbs and everything is kind of like, it's really special.
When I was in court, going through my court stuff and all that, and I told Ray about it, and Ray just helped me out. He wrote me a letter, and I gave it to the judge, and she just let me out the same day. I start college next in September. I'm a major in business administration. I got a scholarship. In the future, I'm gonna have a family, work hard, and still help people. I wanna like build something to help people, like have my own organization like Brook Park. Teamwork makes the dream work. That I learned that from Ray.
We've been funded to the tune of $300,000 to develop renewable technology-powered food production greenhouse on public housing land. We have a major institution working with us, Columbia University Graduate School of Architecture and Planning is helping us spec it out. I'm working on the workforce development aspect of that. And the idea is to be able to facilitate for disconnected youth who would otherwise be involved in the underground economy, instead of selling drugs, be involved in selling healthy food and learning about renewable energy technology, how to manage an operation and how to produce food locally. And as you know, from an environmental perspective, food that's grown locally and is distributed locally literally reduces the carbon footprint of food in terms of transportation costs, as well as an absolute cost of that food. So this is very, very significant model for economic development that you know we're working on currently.
I think every time we do anything, it's like seeds of change are being planted. You may not see the direct effects of it immediately, but as sure as I'm talking to you, someone else will hear it, and hopefully they'll stand up and do something in their own community. You don't have to do anything in the South Bronx, do it where you live. I'm sure there's injustices happening that people need your solidarity, and we need to be there for each other.
One of the best ways from an environmental perspective, to teach these lessons is not through some kind of intellectual discussion where we're trying to get folks, particularly the young people, to cognitively grasp the significance of environmental justice issues, the significance of climate change, but to develop a relationship. How do you do that? Cultivating the land. How do you do that? Getting out and recreating on the water. It's a very affirming connection. One feels very wholesome, one feels very alive. That lays the foundation for engaging in initiatives that we would call being socially responsible.
For the children, for all the people who live in our community, for my own son who's on my chest here, and my daughter who's 19 years old, that we have to stand up and try to create a better future. We know that things aren't heading in the right direction as pertains to climate change and environmental justice. And so I think each and every one of us are responsible for making sure we do our part.